They tell us not to go to college, but now they want licensed engineers and architects for free?
This magnificent structure is a testament to our faith and hard work. It's truly a blessing from Jehovah.
They sold our Kingdom Hall. We built that place with our own hands, and they sold it without even telling us.
30 years I gave them for free, and I have nothing to show for it, not a dollar.
How does an organization build a billion-dollar empire without paying a single salary? The answer is a business model that most people never notice. A model where licensed architects work for free, where structural engineers donate their expertise, where electricians, plumbers, and heavy equipment operators show up every morning, build broadcast-grade studios and residential towers, and go home with nothing but the belief that their labor is sacred. Before we go any further, let me be clear about what this video is and what it is not. This is not an attack on individual Jehovah's Witnesses. The men and women who volunteer on construction projects do so out of sincere conviction, and this channel respects their right to believe and to serve as they choose. What this video examines is the institutional model behind that service, the financial structure, the labor framework, and the documented policies that govern how that volunteer labor is used, valued, and accounted for. Every claim in this video is drawn from publicly available records, official Watchtower publications, construction industry data, regulatory filings, and the first-hand testimony of people who lived the experience and chose to share it publicly. This is investigative journalism. The goal is transparency, accountability, and honest conversation. The kind of conversation that thousands of you have told us you cannot have anywhere else. That model has a name. It is called religious volunteerism, and right now it is being used to construct the most expensive project in the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, a 249-acre media campus in Ramapo, New York, at a fraction of what any commercial builder on earth would pay. In our last video, we showed you the construction site itself, the delays, the leaked timeline, the courtroom losses draining the budget. That video generated thousands of comments. But the most striking thing about those comments was not what people said about the construction. It was what they said about themselves. One viewer wrote that it feels like God just threw the investment of their youth in the trash. Years of free labor, buildings raised with their own hands, sold off as commercial real estate while they watched from the outside. Another put it more bluntly. After years of giving free labor, the organization destroyed their family. And they asked why this organization has the reputation it has. Look at the fruit it produces. Those are real people describing real lives. And what their words revealed is that the story of Ramapo is not about concrete and steel. It is about the people who pour the concrete and carry the steel, the math behind their labor, and the contradiction at the center of an organization that needs specialists but punishes the path that creates them. Stay with me. Part 1. The math they never show you. Ramapo is a multi-building complex, 10 residential structures, broadcast-grade production studios, post-production suites, audio engineering facilities, dining halls, maintenance infrastructure, and the full site work required to support hundreds of residents on 249 acres of undeveloped forest. In commercial terms, comparable projects, university campuses, hospital complexes, corporate headquarters, carry total budgets in the range of $700 million to over $1 billion. Labor typically represents 40 to 50% of that total. Take the conservative end. 40% of $700 million is $280 million in labor alone. That is the number the organization does not pay. Every electrician, every concrete finisher, every steelworker, every plumber, every site supervisor, every architect, and every engineer on that project is classified not as an employee, but as a volunteer. No wage, no overtime, no benefits, no pension, no social security contribution, no unemployment insurance. $280 million, minimum, subject to no union negotiation. Protected by no collective bargaining agreement. Any commercial developer building this project with paid labor would face not only the wage cost, but mandatory compliance with prevailing wage laws, union agreements, and the full weight of labor regulation. The cost of compliance alone adds 15 to 20% to any institutional build. The organization pays none of it. The reason is a single legal classification: religious organization, volunteer labor. The exemption that allows a church to use unpaid workers for the construction of its own facilities is the same exemption that allows the Watchtower to operate one of the largest private construction operations in the northeastern United States at a fraction of the cost any secular builder would face. One of your comments captured this perfectly. A viewer wrote that this is what happens when Jehovah's Witnesses look down on higher education and refuse to pay people. Volunteer labor only because they simply will not pay. That viewer understood the model. Part 2. The Education Contradiction. The Watchtower organization has spent decades actively discouraging its members from pursuing higher education. University is described in official publications, convention talks, and elders' guidance as a spiritual danger, a distraction from the ministry, a path that leads young witnesses away from pioneer service and Bethel. Parents who send their children to university are counseled. Young adults who choose a degree over full-time service are viewed within the culture as spiritually weak. This is documented in decades of publications, convention recordings, and the lived experience of millions of current and former witnesses. Now look at what Ramapo requires: licensed architects, structural engineers, civil engineers, electrical engineers, broadcast engineers capable of designing production-grade studio systems, acoustic engineers, HVAC specialists certified for soundstage environments, fiber optic and network specialists, environmental compliance officers, attorneys specializing in construction law, project managers with commercial credentials. None of these qualifications can be obtained without higher education. Every single one requires the university training the organization told its members to avoid. The organization resolves this contradiction silently. It publishes volunteer application forms listing the exact professional qualifications it needs. It circulates them through congregations worldwide. It waits for the members who ignored the counsel, the ones who went to university anyway, who built professional careers despite being told not to step forward and donate their expertise for free. The members who followed the advice are not qualified to build Ramapo. The members who disobeyed it are the only ones who can. And when those trained professionals volunteer, the organization accepts their labor without acknowledging that their skills exist precisely because they did not listen. Every foundation poured at Sterling Forest is poured by people whose education the governing body told them not to pursue. Every studio wall is framed by someone whose career was described from the platform as spiritually dangerous. The organization needs these people. It will not revise the counsel. It will not say thank you for going to school. It will simply take the labor. For free. Part 3. The Volunteer Loophole. One of the sharpest comments on the last video came from a viewer who suddenly realized something. How is it possible, they asked, that the Watchtower uses non-union labor in a place like New York? The answer is not unique to New York. It is a legal framework that exists across the United States, across Europe, across Latin America, and across most developed nations. Religious organizations that classify their workers as volunteers engaged in the construction of their own facilities occupy a legal space that exempts them from the labor protections that apply to every commercial builder. In practice, this means the organization avoids not only wages but the full ecosystem of costs that labor protections create. Health insurance contributions, pension fund contributions, training levies, overtime protections, grievance procedures, safety compliance at commercially mandated standards. In a market like New York, the fully loaded cost of a unionized tradesperson runs between $80 and $150 per hour. But even in countries where labor is cheaper, the exemption still erases a massive cost line from the budget. And the volunteers absorb the risk. If a volunteer is injured on a Watchtower construction site, their recourse is not the same as a paid worker's. The legal framework around volunteer injury on religious construction is murky, varies by jurisdiction, and has historically favored the organization over the individual. The exemption was designed for a congregation painting its own meeting hall on a Saturday afternoon. It was not designed for a multi-year, multi-building, broadcast-grade media campus built by thousands of rotating specialists. But the law does not distinguish between the two, and the organization has built its entire construction empire inside that gap. This is not just an American phenomenon. Watchtower construction projects in Britain, Germany, Australia, Brazil, Japan, and dozens of other countries operate on the same principle. Free labor classified as religious service. No wages, no union, no recourse. The legal language changes from country to country, but the model is identical everywhere. But here is the question that matters most. All of this labor, all of this saved cost, all of this expertise donated for free. Where does the value go when the building is finished? Part 4. The destination of the sweat. For decades, the organization has used volunteer labor for the construction of kingdom halls worldwide. Local members donated weekends, vacation days, and professional skills. Electricians wired the buildings. Plumbers ran the pipes. Families brought food for the work crews. Children swept the floors. The building became the heart of the congregation. And then the organization sold it. Kingdom Hall after Kingdom Hall around the world has been placed on the commercial real estate market over the past decade. Congregations that built their own buildings were merged, their halls sold, the proceeds sent to the central organization. The members who poured the foundation never saw a dollar of the sale price. The families whose children grew up in those halls were told the decision was made above their level. One comment on the last video described this as having their life's investment thrown in the trash. Another viewer wrote that they would bet everything that Ramapo itself is just another project built with free labor and donated materials, designed to be sold later at an enormous tax-free profit. That is a prediction, not a fact. But it is grounded in a pattern the members themselves have watched repeat. Brooklyn Heights was built with volunteer labor and sold for over $2 billion. Branch offices on 5 continents were built with volunteer labor and have been sold, closed, or merged. The pattern is the model. Build with free hands. Sell when the asset appreciates. Retain the capital. Repeat. Ramapo looks impressive in the renderings. But behind that facade, local congregations are shrinking. Kingdom halls are being sold. Financial support for local needs is redirected to centralized projects. The base of the organization, the ordinary members who attend meetings and contribute donations every month, is being quietly drained to fund infrastructure they will never use, built by people whose labor they will never see compensated. The buildings look like evidence of growth. The numbers underneath tell a different story. The real cost of Ramapo is not in the budget. It is not in the steel or the concrete or the broadcast equipment. The real cost is measured in years of human life, in careers that were never built because the organization said careers were worldly, in degrees never earned because the organization said education was dangerous, in retirements that will never be funded because the decades that should have built a pension were spent pouring someone else's foundation for free. That cost does not appear on any balance sheet. But the people who paid it know exactly what it was worth, and they are finding each other in the comments of channels like this one, telling stories the organization spent decades making sure no one would hear. The model is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. The question is, how many more people will give their years before they realize who the model was designed to serve? If you live this, your voice matters here. Drop a comment telling us what you built. Which Kingdom Hall? Which Assembly Hall? Which Bethel project? What happened to it after you left? Your story is not just a comment. It is evidence that is growing louder every week. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share this video with anyone who gave their labor and never got the truth about where it went. We will see you in the next one.